The sun had already begun its mellow descent, casting long golden shadows over our neat suburban enclave. The homes, identical in their pretensions yet brimming with individual secrets, stood in a tidy row like well-trained sentinels. My cottage-style house a sanctuary of quietude, and the occasional barking symphony had always been a refuge from the world's noise. But peace is a fragile construct. Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed sentry and the embodiment of HOA pettiness, stood as a discordant note in this sonata of suburban calm. Her presence was felt as much as seen like a persistent stain on a favorite shirt. She arrived with a clipboard clutched in her talons, her eyes sharp and gleaming with the kind of fervor reserved for zealots, or those with a grievance yet unvoiced. The first sign of trouble was subtle, the way a storm begins with a single ominous cloud. She had a gift for finding fault where others saw none. Her senses attuned to the imperceptible infringements on her vision of order. The flower beds were too wild. A rogue garden. Gnome struck her as impertinently whimsical, and then inevitably she turned her gaze to my dog Max. Max, a gentle soul encased in a robust frame of fur and boundless enthusiasm, was my constant companion. His bark was as much a part of the neighborhood's soundscape as the rustle of leaves or the distant hum of traffic. Yet Karen saw him as a disturbance, a fissure in the veneer of perfection she so cherished. The accusation came on a crisp morning, delivered with the precision of a well-aimed arrow. Max had bitten her. The declaration was met with disbelief, the kind that momentarily suspends time and rationale. Max had never shown anything but affection, his indifference to hostility, a testament to his character. But Karen wielded her accusation like a weapon, confident and unyielding. Inside, a simmering fury began to coil, but I wrapped it tightly around a core of calm. I had learned that acting in haste only fed the fire she thrived on. Instead, I observed, letting her words hang in the air like a challenge. A part of me wanted to snap back, to dissect her accusation with the precision of a surgeon, but I held my tongue, choosing instead to gather facts, like a detective piecing together a puzzle. The security cameras, installed more for peace of mind than necessity, offered their silent testimony. The footage would reveal the truth, a truth that spoke louder than accusations. In this neighborhood theater, where each resident played their role with practiced ease, I found my script in patience and quiet defiance. Karen's drama would unfold, but it would not be I who added fuel to her fire. Instead, I prepared for the moment when the curtains would draw back, revealing the stage she had set and the truth she conveniently overlooked. I turned, leaving her standing there, a solitary figure on an otherwise idyllic canvas. The air was cool. The promise of autumn whispered in the breeze, and Max, oblivious to the storm, trotted beside me with the trust of the untainted. A battle had been declared, but my arsenal was truth, patience, and the unwavering belief that justice, though sometimes slow, never falters. In this war of wills, Karen might have fired the first shot, but I would write the last line. Karen's voice still echoed in my mind. Though the truth had left her accusations in tatters, yet her persistence remained undeterred. The chatters of the community hummed like a hive disturbed by a careless intruder. In the days that followed, I found myself at the center of a peculiar storm I had not seen coming. It started with the letters. White envelopes slipped silently under my door, each bearing the officious stamp of the Homeowners Association. They arrived with almost comical regularity, each one a new decree that seemed as trivial as it was transparent. Grass must not exceed 2 inches. Trash bins must be brought in by 6 p.m. Sharp, decorative lights are restricted to white or warm white. Karen's fingerprints were all over them. The absurdity of it all almost drew a smile. Karen, with her relentless zeal, found rules where none existed before. Her creativity was almost admirable, if not absurd. Each letter was a testament to her determination to win a war. Only she was fighting. The neighborhood, a once serene enclave, buzzed with whispers. I saw them. The sidelong glances, the hushed discussions that ceased abruptly as I passed gossip. It seemed had found fertile ground, spreading roots swiftly through the community like a weed resistant to reason. Karen, having sown her seeds of discord, nurtured them with meticulous care. But facts were stubborn things. I clung to the truth like an anchor. As the tides of her rumors threatened to pull me under, our home's security footage was clear. My dog had been nowhere near Karen on that day she claimed her injury. The footage was a silent, steadfast witness against her web of deceit. Yet in a world where perception often trumps reality, the truth seemed an inadequate shield. In quiet moments I pondered the nature of power. Karen wielded hers with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. She was a master of the HOA's arcane arts, turning bylaws into bludgeons. Her leadership, if it could be called such, was a study in contrasts, a blend of petty tyranny and relentless pettiness. Still, I found strength in the quiet resilience of my own corner of the world. At home, the soft thud of my dog's paws on the carpet reminded me of simpler truths. He, blissfully ignorant of human politics, was a creature of instinct and devotion. His wagging tail and bright eyes were a balm against the swirling tempest of Karen's machinations. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, painting the sky with hues of defiance, a single line of dialogue pierced the facade she had constructed. A neighbor, emboldened by the truth, whispered almost conspiratorially to me, "We don't all believe her." You know, it was a small victory, a crack in the veneer of Karen's manufactured reality. Yet, it felt monumental. The fight was far from over. Karen no doubt would escalate further. Her sense of self was entwined with her perch atop the HOA hierarchy. But I had learned patience. I would meet her theatrics with the quiet dignity of truth. After all, the wheels of justice, like time, moved at their own pace. And I was prepared to wait and die. The sun rose with a reluctant glow that morning, as if the universe itself hesitated to begin. The day I sat at the small breakfast nook, sipping a coffee that had grown tepid as I reviewed my meticulous notes. Each page held the weight of my anger and disbelief, yet also the promise of vindication. Karen, the self-appointed guardian of our homeowners association, had woven a tale of deceit, accusing my golden retriever Max of biting her. In her recounting, it was a savage attack, yet her story was as fragile as a house of cards. I recalled the scene vividly, her voice, sharp, theatrical, drawing the neighborhood's eyes. They gathered like spectators at a drama, unwilling, yet intrigued. Max, with his gentle eyes and wagging tail, looked on confused by the commotion. Her vicious teeth she had declared, clutching her arm as if she bore evidence of a great struggle. But there was no bite. The security footage, silent and indisputable, told a different story. The camera, perched like a sentinel above the community garden, had captured the truth. Max hadn't even come close to her. He'd been more interested in the fluttering leaves than the gesticulations of the furious woman. I'd watched the footage repeatedly. each viewing fueling the quiet fire within me. Karen's accusations were built on nothing but air, yet the damage was real. Whispers had followed me, hushed conversations that halted when I entered a room. I returned to my notes, each entry a precise strike in a battle I hadn't sought but could no longer avoid. Her pattern was clear complaints about trivialities, dramatics over imagined slights. She reveled in authority, wielding it like a blunted sword, clumsy yet relentless. I had documented every one of her outbursts, each unfounded complaint, and now I prepared to unveil her facade. The homeowners' meeting was my stage, and I intended to perform a quiet yet undeniable act of retribution. I'd contacted the board, requested to present my findings. No fanfare, no grand announcements, just facts laid bare like a spread of autumn leaves, each one distinct yet part of a greater whole. I would not confront her with loud accusations. Instead, I would let her own actions speak louder than any words I could muster. The community center was a dimly lit cavern as I took my place, the projector humming softly, a modern oracle ready to reveal the truth. Faces turned towards me, a mosaic of skepticism and curiosity. My heartbeat was steady, a drumbeat of resolve. I began with the footage. The silent movie playing out in stark clarity. Karen's dramatics contrasted sharply with the gentle playfulness of Max. The evidence was undeniable. Eyes moved from the screen to Karen, who sat rigid, her carefully constructed persona cracking under the weight of exposure. Her gasp was audible, a sharp intake of disbelief as the camera captured the unvarnished truth, and then silence. A palpable shift in the room's atmosphere, respect, and a hint of shame intertwining in the air around her. Finally, a voice broke the tension. Not mine, but a neighbor's. His tone a blend of irony and relief. "Looks like even cameras don't lie." The words hung in the air. A quiet verdict. Karen's authority, once a looming shadow, had withered under the light of truth. As the meeting concluded, I felt the burden of injustice lift slightly. Not from triumph, but from the quiet satisfaction of understanding that justice, though sometimes delayed, arrives with the patient persistence of dawn breaking through the night. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes of light across my living room floor. It was a rare moment of peace in a week, fraught with tension. Even in this stillness, the air felt charged like the static before a storm. I sipped my coffee, reflecting on the absurdity of the situation. The security footage had laid bare the truth that Karen's accusation against my dog Max was as hollow as her neighborly charm. Yet the ordeal had left an imprint, an undercurrent of unease in our otherwise quiet community. The neighbors were starting to notice. Whispers had begun to thread their way through our neighborhood like a creeping vine, inexorable and stubborn. At first, they were only murmurs, hushed exchanges over mailboxes and hedges, but as the days went on, they grew louder, more insistent. People wondered aloud about Karen's motivations, her apparent vendetta against me and my lovable Labrador. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The self-appointed guardian of our community rules, caught in her own web of deceit. I took another sip, letting the warmth of the mug seep into my palms. A flicker of satisfaction stirred within me, though I kept it tamped down. There was something deeply satisfying in knowing that justice, however small, had been served. Yet I couldn't help but feel a pang for Karen. What drives someone to such lengths? The question lingered unanswered as I set the mug down and glanced out the window. Outside, the neighborhood seemed to be holding its breath. Children played, but their laughter was subdued. Neighbors exchanged pleasantries, but their conversations were tinged with an undercurrent of tension. The air was thick with unspoken questions and speculated answers. A silent drama playing out behind closed doors and shuttered windows. A knock at the door interrupted my musings. It was Mrs. Thompson from next door, her eyes a mix of curiosity and concern. She didn't say much, just enough to convey her support, a silent solidarity against the common enemy. Her presence was a balm, a reminder that not everyone was swayed by Karen's tales. As the day wore on, I noticed subtle shifts. People who once nodded politely now offered genuine smiles. Others who had kept to themselves now lingered in conversation, their eyes flickering with a shared understanding. The community was rallying a quiet rebellion against Karen's tyranny. Yet beneath this newfound camaraderie lay an anxiety, a sense of waiting for Karen's next move, for the other shoe to drop. Her silence was a specter that loomed over us, a reminder that this was far from over. Evening came, draping the neighborhood in a purple twilight. As I walked Max along the sidewalk, I noticed glances from shadowed porches and half-opened windows. They were watching, waiting, weighing the balance of power in this unexpected drama. In the cool night air, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. We were not alone in this. The truth had a weight of its own, and it was tipping the scales. The stars blinked into view. Indifferent to our earthly troubles, I stood for a moment, breathing in the crisp night, feeling both the quiet strength of the community around me and the lingering tension in the air. It was a fragile peace, but it was ours. As I turned back home, Max trotting happily beside me, I couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. Whatever it was, I knew we would face it together. Neighbors united against the shadows of deceit. The days after the security footage revelation seemed to flutter by like pages in a book you couldn't quite put down. The neighborhood was neither silent nor loud, suspended in a strange equilibrium. Curious eyes peered out from behind curtains, whispering tales that twisted and turned like vines around the neighborhood grapevine. For once, the gossip wasn't about my dog Daisy. Instead, it was about Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, whose castle had crumbled with the flicker of a security tape. There was a peculiar calm in knowing the truth was out. But calm is not complacency. I knew I had to act, not out of vengeance, but out of principle. Karen's accusation had been more than just an inconvenience. It was a sharp dagger aimed at my character, my family's peace, and my four-legged companion who'd never done harm to anyone. I spent that evening at my kitchen table, a cup of chamomile steaming softly in the chill of the room. The air was still holding its breath as I made my plans. Legal steps, I decided, needed to be taken. Quiet steps, yet ones that would echo loudly in the corridors of our little community. The next morning, the world outside my window appeared just as it always did. The sun rose indifferently, casting its golden glaze over familiar rooftops. But for me, the landscape had shifted imperceptibly. I felt a quiet power within, a resolve that hummed in my veins. I called my lawyer, a sharp-witted fellow who understood the art of subtlety. We discussed defamation and the damage wrought by false accusations. He assured me that we had a strong case. As I walked Daisy that afternoon, the neighborhood buzzed with its usual rhythm, children playing, sprinklers, hissing birds weaving through the sky. A few neighbors nodded in my direction, their gazes lingering. Perhaps a silent acknowledgement of my newfound freedom from suspicion. Daisy trotted beside me, blissfully, unaware of human absurdities, her tail a metronome of pure happiness. Karen, I knew, was holed up in her house, her fortress now a self-imposed prison. The realization of her unraveling authority must have weighed heavily, each brick of her facade crumbling under the weight of her deceit. I wondered if she had watched the footage again, perhaps hoping for a different outcome, a different reflection of herself. The lawsuit was filed a week later, a calculated pebble thrown into the pond of HOA politics. I didn't announce it. I simply let it ripple through the network. It wasn't long before neighbors started to talk a fresh breeze of gossip this time, not in my direction. Reactions varied. Some were sympathetic, others scandalized. All were intrigued. It wasn't about money. It was about setting a precedent, about drawing a line that said no more. No more lies, no more bullying under the guise of neighborhood governance. It was about integrity, about holding people accountable, even in the microcosm of suburban life. The irony wasn't lost on me that it took something as mundane as a dog walk to unravel the fabric of Karen's authoritarian regime. In the quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on justice and fairness. How sometimes the simplest truths could undo the most elaborate lies. And so, with the legal gears set in motion, I continued about my days with a sense of quiet empowerment. Justice may be a slow-moving train, but it never fails to reach its destination. Until then, I had Daisy, the embodiment of loyalty and innocence, trotting beside me. And that was enough for now. The meeting room buzzed with anticipation, a tense undercurrent rippling through the gathered neighbors. The air crackled with a peculiar blend of vindication and discomfort, as though everyone was acutely aware that the scales of justice were about to tip. I stood in the back, my heart steady, but my mind racing. Karen was there too, her presence unmistakable. She sat at the head of the table, her usual throne in these meetings, clutching her meticulously prepared notes, an armor of paper and ink against the storm she had unwittingly conjured. The room was packed more than usual. Faces from every corner of our community filled the seats, each one a witness to the final act of this unfolding drama. The chairperson cleared his throat, a habit that usually commanded silence. Today, it only heightened the tension. The projector whirred to life, casting its pale light onto the screen, security footage. The damning truth she could not refute flickered into existence. The grainy images played out with a clarity that reality often lacks, every detail stark, every second a testament to my dog's innocence. There it was the moment she claimed my dog attacked. Instead, the footage showed her a stumbling misstep as she recoiled from a harmless bark, a bark she had provoked with her shrill, unnecessary screeching. The irony was delicious. The room was silent now. The footage had spoken in a voice louder than any accusation Karen shifted uncomfortably, the weight of her duplicity pressing against her shoulders, folding her into herself. Her notes lay forgotten, useless in the face of undeniable truth. I looked around, meeting the eyes of those who had doubted, who had wondered, even those who had believed her. Some couldn't hide their smirks. Others sat solemn, processing the shift in the community's narrative. It was a moment of collective realization, a silent agreement that her reign of petty tyranny had reached its limit. The chairperson spoke then, a rare moment of public censure. A few words were all it took to strip away her veneer of authority to expose the hollow core beneath her performed perfection. Karen's face was a mask of disbelief, her authority crumbling like old plaster. Inside I felt a quiet triumph, not just for me, but for every slight, every manufactured drama she had ever inflicted on this community. Yet this was not a moment to gloat. It was a reminder of the fragile nature of power built on lies. The meeting concluded with an air of finality. People dispersed, some offering me nods of support, acknowledgments of a battle won without the need for words. I lingered a moment longer, absorbing the silence that followed the storm. Karen remained seated, isolated in the echo of her own, making her notes scattered like autumn leaves, ignored and irrelevant. It was almost poetic. Almost. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, calm, resolute, unchanged. My dog waited outside, oblivious to the human drama content in the knowledge of unconditional love. We walked home together, the shadows of the evening stretching long across the pavement. Tomorrow the sun would rise on a community slightly more united, slightly more aware. Karen would still be there, of course, but her voice, like the autumn leaves, would rustle with less authority, less power. Just another sound in the background, easily ignored in the harmony of our neighborhood's daily symphony.